running with all the despair. This humanity, a bunch of bloodsuckers, yeah. I'd rather go blind than be this misunderstood, yeah. Rather go blind than be this misunderstood, yeah.
Welcome to the program, folks. How about that opening music, huh? I'd rather go blind than be misunderstood. That is Trixie Whitley with Daniel Lanois and Black Dub. Our guest this week is Cindy Sheehan, and I want to jump right into it and tell you a little story about her. A couple of years ago, my wife and I went to San Francisco to see Peter Gabriel, and through a series of events, I had become Facebook friends with Cindy. And I sent her an email saying, hey, if you're around, this is when she was running for the governor of California. I said, if you're around, do you want to meet up for lunch? We'd never met in person before. She didn't really know anything about me. And she said, sure. And she came in from Vacaville and met my wife and I at one of our favorite Indian restaurants in San Francisco. And, I was nervous. We're there waiting for her. It's this big, at least to me, celebrity, a person who I see as a champion of the anti-war movement over the last 10 years, who's been consistent and unrelenting in her message of trying to educate Americans and mobilize us towards being a more peaceful and aware people. And so, to me at least, she was one of my heroes. And she comes, I'll never forget it. We're sitting in the restaurant and the door opens up, and then this lady comes traipsing in, and just dressed in normal clothes. I think she had a Hello Kitty backpack, and just moseys up to the table and, hey, I'm Cindy, and sat down with us, and we had a lovely lunch with her. We talked about her time, friendship with Hugo Chavez. We talked about her son Casey. We talked about, how she was slandered for so much relentlessly by Bill O'Reilly and Sean Hannity and Glen Beck and Limbaugh, all the usual righty bullies. And, at the end of the lunch, she kind of stood up, thanked us, said she was going off to a protest, put her Hello Kitty backpack on, and moseyed off out the door just as she had come in. And, I sat there in disbelief. My wife and I looked at each other, and the thing that really blew me away about about the whole experience is that this was not a celebrity. This was not some kind of superhuman person. This was not a human with supernatural abilities or a lot of privilege and access, and who possessed skills and traits that the rest of us do not. This was just a regular lady, just a mom, from Northern California, and became radicalized, became mobilized when she lost her son, and it really hit me how fantastic and how horrible that is at the same time. She really has been such a catalyst for the anti-war movement in this country, and she's a regular person. She's just like you and I. It was the death of her son that pulled the scales from her eyes and made her realize really the situation we're in as Americans and our relationship to the rest of the world and our own government and our kind of perpetual hunger for war. But at the end of the day, she's like the rest of us, which put the ball back in my lap, because as fantastic as she's been, she is just one person. And if we're going to be a people that holds our government accountable, if we're going to be a people that holds each other accountable, we need all hands on deck. We need everybody in the game. There's a larger theme for this episode and next week's. Next week, we're going to have Tamara Rubin from Let's Safe America with us. And I originally was going to have both of these guests as two guests within the same show, but we decided to split it up. And the reason I'm telling you about it now is because both episodes, to me, revolve around the same theme. Tamara became an activist for one of the most successful nonprofits going right now, Lead Safe America, to try to educate parents and get resources to parents about lead poisoning, especially lead-based paints that are still in so many homes, especially here in the Portland area where I live. And it was after her children were poisoned, after her son was poisoned, that she got radicalized and didn't just stay a victim and didn't just stay angry and didn't become overwhelmed with feelings of grief and loss and anger and hopelessness, but actually decided to do something about it, not only for her own child, but for everybody else's children as well. And so these next two episodes are dealing with that theme. Mothers who have either lost a child or come close to losing a child, or had their child seriously injured or poisoned. In Tamara's case, it was brain damage for her children, permanent brain damage. In Cindy's case, it was the loss of her son, Casey. Mothers who took that loss, that unimaginable loss, and turned it into something beautiful, turned it into something transformative, which is the theme of the show, right? And turned it into something that created access and opportunity for the rest of us and for the rest of the world's children. So my hat is off to both of them and to other mothers who lose something so precious, something that most of us can't imagine, and transform that loss into meaning and into purpose in their lives. So first we have Cindy Sheehan, and then next week Tamara Rubin on this topic. I want to make one show note about what you're going to hear during this episode. We have the usual interview with Cindy, and then some breaks where we play music and some public service announcements and other things. And you're going to hear two clips in this episode, relating to Cindy and her past. For those of you that maybe aren't familiar with her, like I said, she lost her son Casey in Iraq in 2004, and then went on to become what a lot of us call the Peace Mom, has written several books, started what I think is the prototype of what became the Occupy movement with her Camp Casey down in Crawford, Texas, and has been a consistent and vocal opponent of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, not only during the Bush administration, but during the Obama administration as well. You're going to hear two pieces of audio a little later in the program. One is when David Letterman had Bill O'Reilly on, and they get into a bit of an argument over Cindy. And then the second one is a forum that was hosted by the great Howard Zinn, where he has Marissa Tomei read a speech that Cindy Crawford gave soon after she lost her son Casey. So I just wanted to mention those two things to you. I know you're going to enjoy this episode. As always, I really enjoyed making it. And we tend to not be too political here on the Block, but every once in a while we have to discuss what's going on around us, and Cindy's the person to do that with. All right, folks, enjoy the episode. We will see you on the other side.
Welcome to On the Block with Andrew Gurovich, a podcast about authentic people doing beautiful things. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to the program, everybody. This is your host, Andy Gurovich, and our guest today is Cindy Sheehan. Cindy really needs no introduction, but I'm going to go ahead and give you one for her anyway. Cindy Sheehan is an activist, author, public speaker, social artist, and an all-around humanitarian badass. I wrote this myself for you, Cindy.
Nice.
Well, some of it. Her world changed forever when, on an April 4th, 2004 mission in Sadr City, Iraq, her son, Army Specialist Casey Sheehan, was killed. Cindy and other military families met with President George W. Bush in June of 2004, and by that October, Cindy's grief had led her to action. She wrote at that time, "I was ashamed that I hadn't tried to stop the war before Casey died, while I now felt that if I couldn't make a difference, I would at least try." Cindy became one of the strongest, most personal, and persistent voices in the movement against the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. In fact, I believe she has done more to reinvigorate and galvanize the anti-war movement as such than any other single individual in the last 10 years. Her quest to end the war, bring the soldiers home, and hold politicians accountable for the decisions that sent the troops to Iraq in the first place has been unrelenting. Cindy, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Andy. It's really nice to talk to you.
I can't help but start our conversation by noting that we are talking together. This episode's not going to air for a couple of days, but we're talking together on Veterans Day.
Right.
And I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on that. When I was preparing for the show, it really struck me that, and I don't know how many of our listeners know this, but that Veterans Day is something that has evolved from Armistice Day, right? Which was a day for peace, which was a day to celebrate the end of not only World War I, but hopefully all war.
Right.
And what it's devolved to is this kind of generic, thank a guy in fatigues for getting his legs blown off for Exxon.
Right. So, yeah, it's, first of all, I always think that Casey never even had a chance to become a veteran. He was active duty when he was murdered in Iraq by the policies of the U.S. empire, imperial war machine, and so it just is really like I can't even turn on the news today, not even my local news.
Yeah.
It's all about veterans and thanking veterans, and this morning I was like rather appalled. When I was watching the news, there was a World War II veteran, and she was first generation Japanese, and her family was put in a concentration camp, and she's still enlisted to go fight for the United States.
Isn't that
and
amazing?
I would just be like, geez, that would be the last thing I would think of if my family was interred.
I'm fascinated by, Veterans Day must be a kind of an odd and bittersweet time for you, especially when, again, it's kind of devolved into this generic, thank these people for uncritically allowing their bodies to be used for a perpetual war machine. And, Mother's Day is another holiday that started as Mother's Day for Peace, as a bunch of mothers like yourself that were tired of getting these knocks on the door and hearing about their dead sons. And so they were mobilizing against this very thing, but then it devolves into this kind of Hallmark holiday. When I turn on the TV, in between these, schlocky, feel-good, just thank a vet stories, I see all these Veterans Day sales at JCPenney or something. And what in the world, how does somebody like you look at stuff like that? It must just be really obscene.
Well,
buy things to honor the veterans, more conspicuous consumption.
Right. It just is, to me, it's just really disgusting. And like I said on my Facebook wall, politicians and corporate media, the talking heads say stuff like honor the veterans, support the troops. And it's just empty rhetoric because, of course, they're dying for capitalism. After 9/11, what were we told to go shopping and traveling to support the economy? And so that's what everything's all about, and it's just, it's not really bittersweet to me. It's just bitter.
It's bitter.
This day is just bitter to me. And, because the government and the war machine, they send our young people to die and kill other innocent people, other victims for profit. And then when they get home, 20-something veterans a day commit suicide.
22.
8 of them are from the Iraq-Afghan wars. Over 50% of the population, homeless population, are veterans. Over 100,000 Vietnam vets have committed suicide, either by outright suicide or just, dying on the streets alone. And so it's just really disgusting that we have one day that supposedly honors veterans, but that's not what this country is about. What this country is about is glorifying war, so our young people feel like, it's honorable and it's patriotic to sign up for these things, and then they get used in the most despicable ways.
And it's funny, we haven't learned this as a civilization, because this is exactly the kind of thinking that led to the undoing of ancient Greece and ancient Rome. It was funny, I was just about to say before you brought that up that in the last 48 hours, while we've been arguing over Starbucks cups, 44 veterans have lost their life to suicide.
And that's not anything that's going to be brought up on Veterans Day by this corporate media.
No.
I mean, the distraction of the stupid Starbucks cups is it's just a heaven sent thing to distract people from not just the wars, not just from the way that this country doesn't honor veterans, this country is in the business of making more wounded veterans, not helping them. You know, the TPP, I don't know if Obama recently signed it. And there's just, but then we get distracted by saying that he's not going to sign the Keystone Pipeline, although something like 8 equivalents of Keystone Pipelines have been built while he's president.
In the works,
so,
right? Or,
it's
or are
like,
in the works, exactly.
It's a distraction du jour. And those coffee cups is like, let's not even, I mean, I wouldn't even drink coffee at Starbucks anyway. Let's talk about that instead of the stupid cups.
Yeah, let's talk about the exploitation of workers, the pollution of the land with coffee cups, how Starbucks has become this kind of, again, another global empire that rapes the land. If we look at what coffee plantations alone are doing to rainforest in South America.
Right, and they're not sustainable. They're not GMO free. They're not bovine growth hormone free. I mean, nobody should be putting that poison into their bodies,
exactly.
No matter what their stupid coffee cups look like.
I couldn't agree more. Where do you think, where is the anti-war movement today? And, you know, the youth in music. I get disheartened sometimes by not seeing it. And do you think it's there but just not reported on? Are they winning in being able to keep young people distracted? Where is the anti-war movement at the moment in your estimation?
Well, there really is very little anti-war movement at the moment. It's very the one that I was in like 2004, 2005, 2006. That was actually upon reflection, and I've done a lot of reflecting on this, trust me, was an anti-Bush movement.
Yeah.
And so Bush was gone, so what's the need for, a movement? And Obama, of course, we've learned that really Obama and Bush aren't the ones that are technically in charge.
Yeah.
But, the same policies that we opposed during the Bush administration are going almost, with no opposition. Obama is continuing them. And it's super frustrating to me and very sad that the movement that I devoted so much time and energy, and like you said, I'm still devoting so much time and energy and resources to, was very unprincipled and just like abandoned. The one thing that has really struck me in this time of Obama, that there is so little international solidarity between the people. Now, as a socialist, I would say between the workers, but between humanity, between our brothers and sisters that are suffering across our borders, there's no solidarity. We don't get up thinking, oh my God, this artificial nation that I live under is destroying so many lives around the world. I'm just saying most Americans, because I know we do. But, most Americans, they don't even think that. They think, and Obama to me hasn't been that great domestically either, but let's put all our energy into Bernie Sanders because he's promising free college tuition, but he's just as much of a warmongering imperialist as any of the ones running as a Democrat before him.
Yeah, and he still won't say anything to contain the expansion of the settlements in Israel. He's still going to give Netanyahu a blank check.
He supports it. That's why. Things he have said is in support of it. Israel's our only friend in the Middle East. It's a democracy. We have to support it. He's supported it by his votes. And
Bibi was just at the White House. Netanyahu was just at the White House a couple of days ago, I'm assuming, to give Obama his marching orders for the next 15 months. It's frustrating to me because I see exactly what you're saying, and I think this is a real downfall of the American left at the moment, because I think you're exactly right. It mobilized as an anti-Bush movement, but when Obama came in, there was this idea. In the beginning, he said, I'm going to shut down Guantanamo, which he didn't do anything on. I'm going to end the wars, which he kind of hasn't done. He hasn't ended the war in Iraq at all. And then And then right after that, all of the Syria rhetoric starts floating, and then the switch happens, and then it's like, okay, well, Al Qaeda. That was just, this is the position of the left. That was this boogeyman the Bush administration invented in order to justify these wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. But ISIS is a real threat, and Obama's going to right to go. And so we just fall for it again and again, right? And then they'll milk that thing as long as they can, and then come up with some other acronym of scary brown people that we have to devote trillions of dollars and our young people to go try to stop. And I really think this has been a downfall of the American left, and they've kind of left women like you and people like you, mothers like you, out to dry with this kind of blind trust that a liberal, quote-unquote, president, not that we've ever had such a thing, with the possible exception of Carter, would make those same choices. Obama's been a PR person's dream.
Well, yeah, but I don't even want to get into Carter because we're feeling the blowback of his policies in Afghanistan right now, and supporting the dictatorship in Indonesia and things like that. You're right. And the Carter Doctrine, which said that if any of our strategic interests, which means oil companies, were threatened in the Middle East, and we had the right to go in there. So maybe he's been the best ex-president, but as a president, I don't know. He put solar panels on the White House. Big deal.
Like 6 of them or something. Yeah, another token gesture. Yeah. I've often said to people that to get angry with the president for the choices of the country on these things is like getting angry with the clown for what McDonald's does. We're really just looking at a figurehead.
Right, but the only reason that, and I understand that, and people get upset with me because I do point out that Obama is just another fraud, another puppet. But we have to keep pointing that out so people will finally get it. You said that we had the Mother's Day Proclamation for Peace, and that was, I believe, right after the Civil War, the U.S. Civil War. But our young people are still dying, and there's been the 20th century was the year of tens of millions. I mean the century of tens of millions of civilians dying. That's when the warfare became oriented towards killing civilians and not combatants. Yeah. And so it hasn't, since that obviously hasn't gotten better, but that's because the people, we need to get the citizens of the nation mobilized in ways that reflect the principles of humanity, not the principles of the 1%. Yeah. And so here in the United States, the people that should be standing shoulder to shoulder with us, I mean, we should be like the Walking Dead. We should be surrounding the White House, 50 people deep. I'm talking about the show The Walking Dead.
Yes. Oh, I love it. Yeah.
All the zombies surrounding the thing now is my favorite show. But we should be that way. And we should be saying, hey, this country, we want this nation run based on our principles, not based on the principles of the profiteers and the capitalists and the warmongers. And the thing is, though, Andy, we see people who probably feel more like us than they do like Obama or Hillary or Bernie Sanders. Yeah. We see them getting so involved in partisan politics that they dump their own principles in favor of
every 4 years they go, maybe this is going to be the one. This will be the guy that doesn't lie to us. This will be the woman that isn't going to lie to us. It's remarkable. We're going to go to our first break here, and we're speaking with Cindy Sheehan. This is your host, Andy Gurvich, and you were listening to On the Block Radio. Cindy, can you hold on for over the break for a little bit more?
Sure.
Great. All right, folks, we will be right back after these messages.
Thank you for listening to On the Block. Free radio that's worth twice what you paid for it. Be right back.
The soldiers and Marines are noble. They're not terrorists. And when people call them that, like Cindy Sheehan called the insurgents freedom fighters, we don't like that. It is a vitally important time in American history, and we should all take it very seriously and be very careful with what we say.
Well, and you should be very careful with what you say also.
Give me an example. Give me an example.
How can you possibly take exception with the motivation and the position of someone like Cindy Sheehan?
Because I believe she's run by far-left elements in this country. I feel bad for the woman.
Have you lost family members in armed conflict?
No, I have not.
Well, then you can hardly speak for her, can you?
All right, I'm not speaking for her. All right, let me ask you this question.
Let's go back to your little red and green stories.
This is important. This is important. Cindy Sheehan lost a son, a professional soldier in Iraq, correct? She has a right to grieve any way she wants. She has a right to say whatever she wants. When she says to the public that the insurgents and terrorists are freedom fighters, how do you think, David Letterman, that makes people who've lost loved ones by these people blowing the hell out of them, how do you think they feel? What about their feelings, sir?
Well, what about why are we there in the first place?
We're there.
The president himself, less than a month ago, said we are there because of a mistake made in intelligence. Well, whose intelligence? It just somebody got off a bus and handed it to him?
No, it
was with the intelligence gathered by his administration.
By the CIA.
Yeah. So why are we there in the first place? Well, I agree with you that we have to support the troops. They are there. They are the best and the brightest of this country. There's no doubt about that. And I also agree that now we're in it, it's going to take a long, long time. People who expect it to be solved and wrapped up in a couple of years, unrealistic. It's not going to happen. However, that does not eliminate the legitimate speculation and concern and questioning of why the hell are we there to begin with?
If you want to question that and then revamp an intelligence agency that's obviously flawed, the CIA, okay? But remember, M16 in Britain said the same thing. Putin's people in Russia said the same thing, and so did Mubarak's intelligence agency in Egypt.
Well, that makes it all right?
No, it doesn't
the intelligence
make it right.
across the board makes it all right that we're there?
It doesn't make it right. The mistakes are made.
I'm very concerned about people like yourself who don't have nothing but endless sympathy for a woman like Cindy Sheehan. Honest to Christ.
No, I'm sorry.
Honest to Christ.
No way. No way you're gonna get me. No way that a terrorist who blows up women and children...
Do you have children?
Yes, I do. I have son the same age as yours. No way a terrorist who blows up women and children is going to be called a freedom fighter on my program.
I'm not smart enough to debate you point to point on this, but I have the feeling...
We can check that with the cat.
I have the feeling about 60% of what you say is crap.
Hi, I'm Layla Ali. I might be undefeated in professional boxing, but there's one problem even I can't fight alone: childhood hunger. Over 17 million kids in America may not know where their next meal is coming from. That's 1 in 5 children. Yet billions of pounds of surplus food produced right here in America just get thrown out every year. That's more than enough to feed every last hungry child. That's why the Feeding America nationwide network of food banks gathers surplus food and gets it to hungry kids before it goes to waste. But they can't do it without your help. Join me in supporting Feeding America and your local food bank by going to feedingamerica.org. Together we can knock out hunger. Together, we're Feeding America.
To help solve hunger in your community and to find your local food bank, visit feedingamerica.org, brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
This is a speech by Cindy Sheehan, whose son Casey was killed in action in Iraq on April 4th, 2004, and she delivered a speech in August at the Veterans for Peace Convention in Dallas, Texas. This is before she was heading down to camp outside of Bush's vacation home in Crawford. President Bush refused to meet with her, but she and helped galvanize sentiment against the occupation of Iraq.
I said to my son not to go. I said, you know it's wrong. You know you're going over there. You know your unit might have to kill innocent people. You know you might die. And he says, my buddies are going. If I don't go, my buddies will be in danger. 30 of our bravest men have already died this month. And it's only the 5th of August. And the tragedy of the Marines in Ohio is awful. But do you think George Bush will interrupt his vacation and go visit the families of the 20 Marines that have died in Ohio this week? No. Because he doesn't care. He doesn't have a heart. Not enough to stop his little playing cowboy game in Crawford for 5 weeks. So, as you can imagine, every day the grieving parents that have lost I don't like to use that word. The parents whose child was murdered, it's extremely difficult. You can't even get a small scab on our wound because every day it's ripped open. So anyway, when that filth spewer and warmonger George Bush was speaking after the tragedy of the Marines in Ohio, he said a couple of things that outraged me. Seriously, outraged me. George Bush was talking, and he never mentioned the terrible incident of those Marines. But he did say that the families of the ones who have been killed can rest assured that their loved ones died for a noble cause. He also said, he says this often, and this really drives me crazy. He said that we have to stay in Iraq and complete the mission to honor the sacrifices of the ones who have fallen. And I say, why should I want one more mother to go through what I've gone through? Because my son is dead. You know what? The only way he can honor my son's sacrifice is to bring the rest of our troops home. To make my son's death count for peace and love, not war and hatred like Bush stands for. I don't want him using my son's death or my family's sacrifice to continue the killing. I don't want him to exploit the honor of my son and others to continue the killing. And I just had this brainstorm. I'm going to Crawford. I don't know where Crawford is, but I don't care. I'm going. And I'm going to go, and I'm going to tell him, you get that evil maniac out here because a Gold Star mother, somebody whose son's blood is on his hands, has questions for him. And I'm going to say, okay, listen here, George. Number one, I demand every time you get up and spew the filth that you're continuing the killing in Iraq to honor my son's sacrifice, honoring the fallen heroes by continuing the mission, you say, accept Casey Sheehan. You don't have permission to use my son's name. And I'm going to say, and you tell me what the noble cause is that my son died for. And even if he starts to say freedom and democracy, I'm going to say bullshit. You tell me the truth. You tell me that my son died for oil. You tell me that my son died to make your friends rich. You tell me my son died so you can spread the cancer of Pax Americana, imperialism in the Middle East. You get America out of Iraq, you get Israel out of Palestine, and you'll stop the terrorism. And if you think I won't say bullshit to the president, then you're wrong. Because I'll say what's on my mind. So anyway, I'm going to Crawford tomorrow, and I'm going to say, get George here. And if they say no, he's not coming out, then I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to put up my tent here, and I'm staying until he comes and he talks to me. And another thing that I'm doing is, my son was killed in 2004, so I'm not paying my taxes for 2004. And I tell everybody that if I get a letter from the IRS, I'm going to say, you killed my son for this, I don't owe you anything. I live in Vacaville, California. If you can find me there, come and get me and put me on trial. It's up to us as moral people to break immoral laws and resist. And as soon as the leaders of a country lie to you, they have no authority over you. These maniacs have no authority over us. They might be able to put our bodies in prison, but they can't put our spirits in prison. When I was growing up, it was communists. Now it's terrorists. So you always have to have somebody that's our enemy to be afraid of, so the war machine can build more bombs and guns and bullets and everything. But I do see hope. I see hope in this country. 58% of the American public are with us. We're preaching to the choir, but not everybody in the choir is singing. Mm-hmm. If all of the 58% started singing, this war would end.
This is S. Renee Mitchell, creative revolutionist, and you are listening to On the Block Radio.
Welcome back, folks. This is Andy Gurvich. You're listening to On the Block Radio. We've been talking with Cindy Sheehan, and when we left, we were talking about the anti-war movement and the state of it. And we had a guest on a few weeks ago named Stephen Schwartz, who's a cultural critic, a sociologist, an anthropologist, a researcher, and he's been looking at social movements and what makes them successful and not successful. And his research is fascinating in a lot of ways. And one of the things that really blew my mind is he says, it only takes 13% of a population to actually mobilize change. That if 13% of the American population, you're talking about, we should be in front of the White House, and people think, of the 300 million people here, that it's going to require all 300 million people in order to make a change. And that's not what the research shows. If 13% of the country, right, showed up in Washington, D.C. and said, we're not leaving until change occurs, then that would shut the city down. Right. Permanently. And so it doesn't take that much. It's just it's gotten this American me first, I can't make a difference, it's too big, it's too corrupt, it's too far gone attitude is, I think, part of what groups like the 1% use to sort of keep us from mobilizing. Would you agree with that?
Yes, that's first of all, the Castros overthrew the Batista dictatorship in Cuba, supported by the U.S. government. They started with like 24 people. Of course, Cuba's smaller, yes. But that's still not 13% of the Cuban population.
And with a lot of woman warriors too, by the way, that were involved in that revolution.
And I believe in the colonial times. Yeah, I'm a U.S. History major, and I tried to forget a lot of stuff I learned. But I think that only 2% of the people supported independence at the time that the Declaration of Independence was written. So, I totally agree with that assessment. But in 2009, I wrote a book called Myth America, The 20 Greatest Myths of the Robber Class and the Case for Revolution. And this was way before Occupy started talking about, the 1%.
Yeah.
But of course, the robber class is what's the 1%, and the institutions that keep them at the 1%. And so one of my myths was that, one person can't make a difference, so you better not even try. And that's what kept me from, well, first of all, I didn't know about any anti-war protests before Casey was killed. If I did, I may or may not have gone, but, you're thinking that these problems are so overwhelming that what can just one person do? And of course, we look at, in the United States, it's a celebrity culture. So really the only people that can really make a difference or have an effect are famous people that have a lot of money, like singers, actors, some politicians. Obama was treated like he was some mega rock star or something.
Yeah.
And, the Beatles in a politician. And I'm not
as long as you go on
exaggerating.
Saturday Night Live, as long as you play a saxophone on Arsenio Hall show, you're all good, right? We want,
Right.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
that's what, and
rock
we
star
think, well,
politician.
I'm just, I would, probably I didn't think this consciously, but I know subconsciously I was just thinking, I'm just a mom from a poor working class family, driving my kids around to their various functions and things like that. So what kind of effect am I going to have? And like you said, when I wrote that, it was just like, if I can't make a difference, at least I'm going to die trying to make a difference.
And I'm interested.
And
go ahead. Finish.
I think I proved that one person can really. I haven't. No policies have changed, but the things that I put in motion have had profound effects on a lot of people and the discourse. So. That's my topic when I go to colleges. You can't just be immobilized by most people aren't apathetic. Most people care about something.
Yeah.
But you can't be immobilized by thinking, oh, I can't make a huge difference, so I'm not even going to try to make any difference.
I'm interested in a couple of things you said that I want to get to in our remaining time. Before Casey was killed, what were your political views? I know that you say you're in this family. I know that from my research that you were active in your church. Were you, where were you and where was your understanding of our country and of religion and of power and politics before Casey's death? And how did that change after he died?
Well, I was, I registered Democrat.
Mm-hmm.
I always thought I was pretty liberal, and I think I probably was, pretty liberal. I grew up during the protests against the Vietnam War.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my formative stages of, 10 to 15, and seeing the horrible results of what the U.S. was doing in Vietnam. And if I was old enough, I probably would have been a protester against the Vietnam Wars. And then, of course, when I was 6 years old, Kennedy was assassinated. So I never really believed the official story.
Yeah.
I thought that the government, for some reason, the government was lying about that. And I read a lot of books. And so I believed that the U.S. did some terrible things, but it wasn't a policy. It was like...
We made mistakes while we were trying to do the right thing kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the ends were justified by the means, or the means were justified by the ends, whichever way that goes.
Yeah.
And so, after Casey was killed and I had so much time to research, and, I was just very fortunate that I got hooked up with some really great thinkers and intellectuals and people that
People like
provided
who?
me.
People like who? Was it like Medea and folks like that, or had you not met her yet?
Oh, I met Medea in 2004,
Yeah.
so she was one of the first people that I met.
Uh-huh.
And she did she did have an influence on me, but of course now I'm way far
Yeah, yeah.
to the left of Medea.
Yeah, exactly.
So I went way past her.
If we had more
But then
time,
I
we'd
got
be,
to know, like after Camp Casey, I got to know Hugo Chavez and,
Uh-huh.
Got more involved in the Latin American struggle, which has been a struggle for centuries. Not just since Bush was president.
The
a
neoliberal
constant struggle.
Yeah, really since European colonialization. You're absolutely right. You took a lot of heat for your friendship with Hugo Chavez, and I'm sure you were prepared for that from a lot of kind of the American idea that he was this kind of American hating dictator. How did you respond to some of that?
Well, of course, the right criticized me about everything I did.
Yeah.
Didn't really matter what I did. But I was kind of surprised that the so-called left also jumped on the critical bandwagon of meeting with Chavez. And it's because they were, more neoliberal, not radical revolutionaries.
Yeah.
And so that's when that's when my transformation began, I think. Being criticized by these so-called leftists for meeting with Chavez, and then when I left the Democratic Party and there's totally being kicked to the curb by the rest of the people, that really, of course I was transformed when Casey was killed, but my political transformation, my understanding of empire just got way deep after, when I realized it wasn't just the Republicans that were the problem.
You were one of the people that first opened my eyes on that. I think where it first started breaking loose for me, because I was the same kind of way. I was a registered Democrat in this, in a committed, establishment liberal, and then was Rage Against the Machine protested out in front of the Democratic convention in 2000, and I remember thinking, why are you guys protesting in front of the Democrats? The Republicans are the bad guys. You know what I mean? Like, it just sat with me. And then in 2004, and following is when I started to realize, and you were one of the people, and I told you this when we first met, and this is going to be one of my final questions for you because we only have a couple minutes left, but I want to know where you found the courage. I mean, so you, like you said, you're just a regular mom from this, a lower middle class family, and then you get the news that your son has been killed. Where did you find the courage to turn this into a life of activism that continues to this day? What drives you? Because when I look back over this, just the devastation of the loss of that child, and then the frustration of not seeing that sacrifice lead to more substantive transformation, and then the kind of vitriol and hatred you received. I remember the Rush Limbaugh inspired Cindy Sheehan as a whore days, and I remember the quote unquote controversy over Casey's headstone days, and where people just came after you like viciously, and you're just this mother of a child who died, who wanted to know why and had every right to speak her mind as a citizen, and it evoked this kind of hatred from people. So how did you find the courage to, because I'll shut up and let you answer the question, but if I were you, I'd be worried about everything from some nut job Tea Partier breaking into my house to try to kill me, to being put on a no-fly list or having CIA, you know what I mean? I would just be terrified to speak the truth the way you have over these past 10 years. How do you keep going? Where do you find the courage to do this?
I don't think these people realize that for a mother, and I can't say every mother, but I can probably say for most mothers, losing a child, burying a child is the worst thing that can happen to you. And I just want to say that death is not even as scary as losing a child, or burying a child. It's not natural. It's painful. But you know what? I survived it. Every day I got up. Every day I was a little bit stronger. And if I can survive burying my child, I'm not afraid of anything anymore. So, they can just kiss my ass. That's all I gotta say. And so, and then I just realized that after Casey was killed, I was putting so much importance in things that didn't matter at all. You know, that I was one of those people leading this life of quiet desperation where you just realize what's important. And I defined what was important to me. And I wasn't going to let anybody else's idea of what I should think is important or what I should be doing affect me. So that's just basically, I just live by my principles. First, you have to define them, and then you have to make an agreement with yourself every day not to sell those principles out. And some days it's easier, some days it's harder, but I can honestly say that I've never sold my principles out for anything.
You know, I had a feeling. Thank you for saying that. And as we close here, as I've watched your activism over the years, I've guessed. I bet you believe, and you're the only one who counts in terms of what I'm about to say, that in terms of you and Casey, you're right where you need to be, and you're right where he would want you to be in terms of how you've spent the last 10 years. And as long as you feel connected in that way, then nobody has shit to say about it. That's
right. Yeah. And so you just have to be grounded. And I always try to just ground to myself in that. And like one of these days that might not make sense. You know, but it still makes sense to me.
It's
what
so
I'm
funny.
doing, it still makes sense, and I still think I'm on the right path. But you have to self-adjust yourself. And then, of course, I've had great mentors that have helped me in that adjustment also.
It's amazing that you've let yourself be open and vulnerable to that. You know, and in closing here, I read an article in prep for this interview, and it's so funny how the media either ignores you or continues to take pot shots at you. And the article was entitled, "Where Did Cindy Sheehan Go?" You know, as if you had disappeared from the scene. And I could talk to you for another 3 hours just covering all the things you've done recently. I mean, you know, you talked about the book you wrote in 2009, but you wrote Peace Mom, you wrote Dear President Bush, you wrote Not One More Mother's Child, you started Gold Star Families for Peace. Camp Casey, which some of our listeners who are our younger listeners might not remember, I credit and many credit as I think really being you mentioned Occupy before Wisconsin, before Occupy Wall Street, there was Camp Casey. It was really that Occupy social movement. It was the first that I had seen in the modern era since the 1960s.
And before Twitter and before Facebook and before Instagram.
Yeah, and people don't remember that you ran for vice president before your running mate went off the rails, Roseanne.
I ran for Congress in 2008 against Nancy Pelosi.
You ran for Congress?
So, because she didn't reflect my principles or the principles of peace. So anyway, Andy, I got to get
Okay, Cindy. Thank you so much.
So it was great to talk to you.
Thank you very much, Cindy. We really appreciate you being on the show.
Well, thanks for inviting me.
Folks, you've been listening to On the Block Radio. Our guest has been Cindy Sheehan, and we will see you on the other side.
You've been listening to On the Block with Andrew Gurovich. The show is produced in Portland, Oregon by Michael DiNapoli at MD Productions. Theme music by Cat Power. Closing music by Jonathan Oak. Look us up on the web at ontheblockradio.com, where you can also link to us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Don't forget to tune in next week for a brand new episode. Previous episodes can be found on our website. Thanks for listening.
Oh, you're beautiful kitty kitties. Oh, look at you out there. Beauty like a bolt of light in a darkened hallway. New minds looking at this world, at our lives, with the perspective of apocalypse children. Standing dusty in the barren highways, standing broken before the fathers who are meant to make us whole, but who only lied to us about what it meant to be a man, about what it meant to be a woman, about what it meant to be a child of this doomed